Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good morning, Rush Nation. Here we are back with another morning show. This time we're talking quarterbacks. If you haven't had the opportunity to listen to yesterday's show, make sure you do. I share a lot of information and facts about running backs, especially watch the video version. There is a lot of really interesting data that's shared in there around the journey of running backs over the last 11 years and what that means for the position this year and how I personally believe it's being slept on. So there's market opportunities for you to go and get ahead of the game and benefit from that. So go back and listen to yesterday's show. But today we're going to talk quarterbacks. And in particular, we're going to focus on ADP values and the position as a whole. So really keen to get into sleeper ADP, have a look at what those values are at the quarterback position. We talked a little bit about this with Pat Fitzmaurice last week even. So give that show a listen to as well. But ultimately, the quarterback position used to be be the last person in your draft to take one. And now with the elevated scoring of people like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, the last few years, Lamar Jackson, and the Konami Code quarterbacks of these run-first quarterbacks, we now are in a really interesting position to look at what to do at the position. And do you go early, do you go middle, or do you go late? And so let's look at the ADP data and where it sort of currently sits. I'm just going to zoom in on this a little bit so we get a better view. So look, with regards to the ADP here, it is really clear in terms of what, if we look at where these QBs are going. This is sleeper ADP. This is last updated on the 15th of July, so close to 10 days ago. We see the first quarterback off the board here is Josh Allen. So he's going off the board here at 22, which is the end of the second round. It's very early for a quarterback. It's a very, very difficult spot necessarily to punch that ticket. I've seen Jasper's going later, but the average ADP in a 1 QB league is he's going at 22. Now, he scored 400 points in each of the last 2 seasons. There's a reason he is the QB1. He is the 1 overall player scoring. So there's an argument that you should take him, but it makes the build a bit more difficult as well. So something definitely to consider there. The next quarterback up is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is going 34 overall, which is at sort of the end of the third round. He was the QB2 in scoring last year. He was nearly 40 points behind Josh Allen. So 40 points behind, and yet he is a whole round, just a round behind him. Doesn't seem like enough of a reach. And he's in this awkward phase of do we think he can be the 1 overall? I'm not sure. I believe he can be. So are we in a spot where taking him in the third round is difficult, especially considering you'd rather either go up and get Allen, or do you want to wait for some of these other guys that are coming off the board? So I get it. We expect him to be better this year. So I can see the argument of him being the second QB off the board, but that's a high price to pay. The QB3 coming off the board here is Patrick Mahomes, and this is one I can't get on board with. Patrick Mahomes was not in the top 4 of scoring last year. He was 4th the year before. So for him to go 3 overall, I don't get it. He's going on name recognition. I'm passing on him here at the top of the 4th round. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There are other options I would much rather have with the ceiling. The next one is Lamar Jackson. He would be one of those, and I think it's fair to say he should be the third quarterback off the board. He was the QB4 in scoring last year. He did miss a game, which put him down from 3rd to 4th. So we should keep that in the lens because they secured the one seed he didn't need to play. But he does have a bit of a low floor. He had a couple of weeks where he scored, 8, 11, 12, 11 and a half. So there is a bit of a lower floor there. But having said that, with the rushing ability, is a mostly safe floor and then a high upside as well. Championship week, he would have won you a title with 36.3 points. It was the QB1 in Championship week. Got it done when it mattered, and that means a lot. So if I put this into perspective, I think I'd much rather have Lamar Jackson than Patrick Mahomes. I think you could coin flip between him and Hurts as well. So I think Hurts will probably give you slightly more passing yards, and that probably might swing it back your way. But I can see that. But again, you're paying a 4th-round pick for Lamar Jackson. That's a steep price. This next one, CJ Stroud off the back of his rookie year. Again, he's only going 2 picks later than the CJ Stroud for all the good work he did last year. He was the QB12. Now, admittedly, he did get injured. He did miss 2 games. If we look at the average points per game, that does elevate him ever so slightly, but still not huge. If we're assuming we're going to take Joe Flacco out of this, he is 9, QB9 on score. So where he is with all those weapons, he is a risk. He's a very big risk to take in this range. So you should be careful taking him here. Again, like others here, Lamar Jackson kind of makes a lot of sense to me. But even Patrick Mahomes, I think, you're thinking 4 picks difference. It's a tight one, but you're seeing a bit of a run here on quarterbacks, and that's something to be aware of. So this is where 5 QBs are going off the board by pick 41, which is middle of the 4th round, which is very early. It's earlier than it ever has been. I expect this to probably regress back a little bit. And I think I'd see these values fall, maybe Allen in the 3rd, and these guys more in the 5th, maybe late 4th. So the argument here is I can see the argument in taking Josh Allen. I can see the argument in taking Hurts and Jackson maybe a little bit later, but I can't get on board on Mahomes or CJ Stroud as good as they are in real life. Fantasy football, I think you're throwing a pick away there. I'd much rather wait on some of these other guys. And then we have a massive wait. So in context of this, the next one off the board is Anthony Richardson, who is up there for me in particular as a guy. Now, he's coming off the board at the end of the 5th. That is quite a high price for a player who was injured, who hasn't completed an entire NFL season, but he does have all the tools and the talent to really get over the top in a Shane Steichen offense. So I like the relative price in the sense of he's going nearly 20 picks behind CJ Stroud, which I like. I do like that sort of value on him. But again, I'd want this to come back a little bit. If we're getting him in the 6th round, then I feel a lot better about that than going up into this sort of 5th round. I sort of want to rate around a round and a half more if we can on Anthony Richardson. But I'd definitely be taking him over the likes of Mahomes and CJ Stroud quite comfortably, especially given the value, and you can stockpile other players. Next one off the board is Joe Burrow. And again, I put him in a similar range to CJ Stroud. Like, good play. He's obviously had some injuries. He's never been the top 5 in scoring at the position. And so to take him here when you've got the next person off the board in Dak Prescott, 10 spots later, just price-wise doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I will be probably fading and not owning a lot of Joe Burrow in 1 QB leagues. In 2 QB leagues, he's far better priced and makes a lot more sense. But in this 1 QB format, I think Richardson I get with the high ceiling with the rushing, or you're going to move on to this next guy, which is Dak Prescott, which I love in this range. At 75, I think this is a really, really good spot. You're getting him in the 7th round. I think that's a huge value on him and what we've seen him do. So I really like this sort of value on him, especially over the likes of Burrow. He was the QB3 last year. Should have really been the QB4. He was ahead of Lamar, as we talked about. But still, I think the value you're getting there is insanely high. And a man with a very safe floor as well with that passing volume. We know the run game is not good there. So I feel pretty good taking him there. Next one off the board, Kyler Murray. I'm quite happy with Kyler Murray in this sort of range. I don't necessarily project him to finish as the QB9. But having said that, I'm looking at it thinking like he can quite easily points per game. He was the QB8 last season, so for him to finish in this range, it's not outside the range of outcomes. It won't take a lot to get him there, especially if he uses his legs a little bit as well. If he starts to connect with Marvin Harrison Jr., then we can see that. So I like the upside on him, even though I haven't quite got him projected here. I do like the upside that you get with him, and like him over other players here. I like Jordan Love as the next QB off the board. I think it's very reasonable that he will finish around QB 10. He certainly finished well above that in both points per game and total points last year. I mean, he only finished 8 points behind Lamar Jackson. I mean, he did play an extra game, but still, I like the range that you're getting here on Jordan Love. I think there is more to come from him as well. So I don't mind this sort of pick here quite late at pick 85. I think you're get some value here. And then we got a huge wait until the next QB, which is Brock Purdy. And I think Brock Purdy's a great quarterback if you miss on some of these guys. For me, I'd much rather have Prescott, Murray, and Love. But if not, Purdy's Mr. Safe Hands. He'll be bottom end of QB1 territory, very safe floor. I mean, he put up 19.2 fantasy points per game last year as an average, which put him at the sort of QB7 range on a points per game basis. It's nice. I think if everyone is healthy and plays more games, I think you'll probably see Brock Purdy come out a little bit lower in that scale. But I think where you're getting him here in this range, I think is absolutely fine. And he's definitely the next guy that should be taken off the board. Then you've got the next tier, which is this Tua Tagovailoa range, which again, considering I can get Jaden Daniels and shoot for the moon afterwards, I just can't get on board. I can't get on board with Tua. I think he's a decent quarterback, don't get me wrong, but I mean, he played all games last year and he finished with less than 300 fantasy points, which on a points per game basis, 16.7 games. I talked about last week his problems with his schedule, especially in the cold and especially outside. He has limitations. I don't necessarily think he's a QB I'll be targeting when you've got guys coming up who I think have much higher ceilings. Jaden Daniels with this rushing ability is one of those. I'm more likely going to pass on Tua Tagovailoa in every single quarterback 1 QB league in this season by a country mile. I'd much rather get invested in someone like Jaden Daniels. And then it starts to get a bit dicey here. If you're still waiting on quarterback, you shouldn't be, because I'm sure by now people aren't taking QB2s in drafts. But the next ones off the board here are Justin Herbert in a run-first offense. The name is getting him up there. I don't think the scheme suits him to finish in this sort of projected area. I'd much rather go with Trevor Lawrence. I think he gives you better receiving outcomes. And he's someone I think I'd much rather have in drafts, or as we see the sort of weight go on even further, unless I've absolutely missed him, and I must have done. I've not seen Jared Goff. Oh, there he is. Sorry, I missed Jared Goff. So Jared Goff is going before Jaden Daniels. That's fine. That makes a bit more sense. So yeah, I mind Goff. If I'm going to miss on Daniels and everyone else, then Goff as a QB1 is fine. He'll be sort of there or thereabouts at the bottom of the position. I'd certainly have him over Herbert and Lawrence, but Lawrence would be next. So look, I think my sentiments on this position is I'm happy to go and get Allen if you're getting a third round price on him. I think you can lock him in for the QB1 conversation overall. The next phase, I don't mind getting Hurts or Jackson. If you're getting them in the late 4th, early 5th window, I think makes sense. I'm probably passing at Mahomes and CJ Stroud at their prices. I'd much rather wait for Anthony Richardson or Dak Prescott. And that's the angle I'm going to be going at. And if I swing and miss on all of those, then it will be a Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, or even taking Jaden Daniels above ADP to secure that sort of upside. So that's a little bit on the quarterback position in the landscape right now. Other things I would say. Now, typically, strategy would be that you would start one QB and you pick one QB, especially if you're drafting that high up, and then all of a sudden you just sort of forget about it. I actually think with where Jaden Daniels is partnered, I actually am really comfortable taking him as a QB2 and going on the upside. I think this year, with all the injuries we've had at quarterback the last 2 years, especially last year, I think I would want to be investing in a second quarterback in this draft. And the way that Jaden Daniels is priced, he is the perfect QB2. And I think if you snare him in the 10th round, maybe even go up a little bit and get him in the 9th round, some people will balk at that and go, well, you can't take him because he's not going to start. You can't be taking non-starters in the 9th round. Right. Well, I mean, you've taken running backs and wide receivers who aren't going to start every single week in the ranges before that. So I don't necessarily agree with that value. I think there's 3 very good reasons to aim for Jaden Daniels as your QB2, especially if you've reached up and got a marquee QB1. Number 1, if your QB gets injured, you've still got someone who can challenge for a mid-range QB1 value on your bench. And you're not tossing a load of value away to make that happen as an insurance policy. I can see a pathway to Jaden Daniels getting to QB6, QB7 this year. That's what you're sort of gambling on. But you're taking that insurance policy if your main guy gets hurt, as we saw with Joe Burrow last year, as we saw with Kirk Cousins last year, as we saw with Justin Herbert last year, as we saw with Anthony Richardson last year. These guys were all quite upper echelon QB takers in drafts. So let Jaden Daniels be that insurance policy. I think you need one at the quarterback position. If you lose your QB and you're streaming Tommy DeVito and other players, unless you hit Joe Flacco last year and won the lottery, you're in a lot of trouble. So that's the first reason you take Jaden Daniels as your insurance policy. The second is a trade asset. Now, if you're in a league that trades and Jaden Daniels starts performing as a top 5, top 6 QB, and then someone loses a QB or their QB struggling, let's say someone's taking Justin Herbert to be a QB1 and he's struggling, you immediately have a commodity that you can trade and get a really good starter level replacement in. So if you're struggling at running back or struggling at wide receiver, you can go and get marquee pieces in your team, or you can really fill the depth in your team by trading that asset. And that's a really important thing to do. I look at those other QBs that we talked outside the QB1 conversation, the Trevor Lawrences, the Tuas, the Justin Herberts. I don't think they're going to get it done for you. I think that they've got plenty of guys like Baker Mayfield that are going to be available that will provide that floor level play that just isn't that far away. Baker Mayfield and Tua Tagovailoa scored essentially the same amount of fantasy points last year. Matt Stafford scored less, but he did play a game less. But he had slightly more, or he missed 2 games, sorry. So his points per game roughly higher. Trevor Lawrence. So if you take this group of Baker Mayfield, Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, they were all split between Matt Stafford. They were all split by just 6.06 fantasy points per game. You got Russell Wilson, who actually performed slightly better. I think he takes a slight regression back, but not loads. 17.7 fantasy points a game. You put him in that sort of conversation as well. And then you got someone like Deshaun Watson, who's not even in these sort of drafted conversations, who again can provide potential upside to that as well. Those guys don't have the ceiling that a Jaden Daniels has in this format. So by taking Jaden Daniels, you're getting a trade asset. That makes a lot of sense. And being able to use him and utilize him as a trade asset could win you a title. The third reason is a blocker. So if you don't have somebody who if you can't trade him for whatever reason and your QB stays fit, he's not scoring points for anybody else. And that's never a bad thing. It's hard to leave those points on the bench, but if he is a person who can really drive up that RB6, RB7 value, then there's no issue playing him just sitting on your bench, and it's better off him scoring points on your bench than him scoring points and pulling W's for other players. So ultimately, that's your other strategy. So there's a lot of strategy towards taking him. The other one I consider if this strategy fails is Deshaun Watson for exactly the same reason. I think he's also got that potential ceiling. Hard to see him get it into the same realm, but there is a pathway to where that could happen. And so those are the 2 guys I think outside of everybody else, outside of those key players sort of after Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, that those are 2 guys you should target as your QB2s because they might have that wow factor, insane factor. Do you know what? If both flame out, it hasn't cost you enough to ruin your league. So that's the strategy I'd be deploying towards quarterback this year. Take one of the elite ones, skip some of those, let the value go, let others chase Mahomes and Stroud and Burrow, go with some of the other names I've mentioned, and then go and get that strong QB2. And that strong QB2 being a Daniels or Watson who have a pathway to being a QB1 and not some of these other folks who are just going to pull up the numbers. Goff might be the third name in that sort of realm as well. That's the strategy on quarterbacks. That is something that I like to try and do most years, especially with all the injuries at the quarterback position. I think it's more imperative that you take a second quarterback this year and don't leave yourself short. So do keep an eye on that in your drafts. Try and execute that strategy. Let me know how you get on. Please leave some comments in the YouTube comments as well. And that should really, I think, elevate things and help you with your strategy deploying that, especially with the running backs we talked about yesterday. So go back and check out that show. That's going to do it for today and this morning. Hope to catch you all later on the flagship show. We should have a good show lined up for you as well. Looking forward to getting more questions in the YouTube comments. Had some great comments. Love to get more questions. If you want to drop by and ask a question, I'll try and answer as many as I can in future shows. I might stockpile a few and then just hold up and then answer them. I might even do a whole show on questions, so feel free to go through those. We'll do some more shows through the week and early next week as well on the rest of these sort of positional values. We'll do a little bit of an FFCC recap as well, and we'll do a few other bits and pieces. So there's lots going on at the moment, but looking forward to bringing you more and more content as we do this show. And we'll also start reacting to more and more training camp news as and when it comes through. If I don't pick it up immediately and you'll see it on Twitter, that's okay. It's still early. We'll make sure to circle back and get it all to you, but especially it'll be more of a reactive show as we get into the summer, late summer. So thanks very much for tuning in. Don't forget to sign up for the listener leagues. We think we're at under 60 spots left. So we are getting through them and they are getting filled. So please do look out for those. But thank you very much for everything. Please continue to support the channel. Please do hit the like and subscribe button. Please do like these shows as well. They help get more reach and other people seeing them. And I know there's the whole I don't want people in my league to see it, but that's fine. We're trying to grow in an international audience as well. So just share the love a little bit if you're enjoying this. This is all free for you, so it would really help us out. But the subscription button, so 60% of the people watching these videos aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please do it. Would massively help us out. But that's going to do it for today. I look forward to catching up with you later on, and don't forget, as always, Rush Nation, keep rushing.